attendees online, and welcome to our webinar on navigating legal challenges in infrastructure sector in the wake of COVID-19. I would like to thank you all for taking the time out to participate in our discussions today. My name is Ramaswamy Balasubramanian, and I am today's moderator for you. I am an engineer MBA. I have 30 years experience in the construction industry, and I last worked with feedback infrastructure for about 12 years on infra projects in project management. And incidentally, I was also involved in the drafting of the first PPP concession agreement in 1997-98, which was drafted by Dr. S. Ali, a lawyer from Malaysia, and I was coordinating between him and the National Highway Authority of India. I am now Director, Infra Advisory, FM Advisory Services Private Limited of the Fox Mandal Group. I am based in Bangalore, and right now I am advising bankers as lenders independent engineer on infra projects, as well as advising them on the pre-sanction for lending to infra projects. Before they lend, we advise them on the projects. Our panelist number one is Mr. Prashant Kumar. He is a lawyer by profession. He has had 17 years experience in legal firms. He is partner Fox Mandal and Associates, and he heads the realty and infrastructure vertical. He is based in Bangalore. He is a EPC contract expert and advises realty and infra clients. Prashanta, welcome to this panel. Our second panelist.
Thank you very much.
Is Mr. R. Chandrasekharan. It's easier to call him RC. He is known as RC to everybody. He is a company secretary and lawyer. He has got 40 plus years in EPC and PPP contracts, and he was with SPIC, SPIC Group in Chennai for 10 years, and about 20 plus years with Larsen & Toubro Chennai as head of legal. He was also director on the board of IDPL, a subsidiary of Larsen & Toubro. He served on the Planning Commission panel to review PPP concession agreement as an expert. He heads the infra practice at Fox Mandal. He is based in Chennai. At present, he is advising infrastructure clients and banks in the road, ports, airports, and metro rail sectors. RC, welcome to this panel.
Thanks, Mr. Ramaswamy, for giving an excellent introduction. Good afternoon to us. Good afternoon to all the participants. Before we get on into the actual subject for the today, I just want to take you through the background.
Let us start webinar discussions.
Yeah.
And what happened is, in the aftermath of lockdown on 25th March 2020, the government did not have any time. They just barely gave you some, a day's advance notice. And imagine all the infrastructure projects getting more than 10,000 projects. 10,000 projects. And they just had a day to suspend operations and leave things literally on as-is where-is basis in most cases and demobilize. So can you imagine the different set of scenarios across the project? I will just drop a few of them. Projects which are just mobilizing, where they are building their whatever the project office and worker sheds, then equipment getting mobilized, assembled, then machine marching towards the site, everything had to freeze and stop where they were. Same way, project demobilizing after completing construction. They would have dismantled all their equipment and also have got all kinds of box sections of, the tower cranes, etc. And material lying loose everywhere. With that, they just had to leave and move out. Similarly to project under construction, they could not take stock of how much work they have done, what material is in the store and what material is lying outside, unless they are doing day-to-day monitoring. So they also had to just leave it and go. We had also cases where equipment which is imported or material imported has landed and awaiting customs clearance. People are worried. Will I incur demurrage? What kind of charges will be there? and when it's going to be possible to remove. Of course, now the lockdown has been slightly relaxed. So at that time, on 25th March, then other cases where bank guarantees were expiring. So again, to obtain from the bank for what period, etc. Again, a big question mark. There were BOT contracts and toll operate transfer contracts where they had to leave everything and go. All the collection mechanisms, everything had to leave. And there are some cases where they change the toll collecting agent annually. Normally, it's from 1st April to 31st March. Imagine in that case, 31st March, person who's supposed to hand over and go, he has to leave on 25th. And when he resumes, who will take over? So all these questions came. Of course, our panelists will have all the answers. And worst of all, the bankers, lenders who have lent money to all these projects, they have actually given loans against some collateral to some parties, could be lands or shares, etc. What happens to the values? Because right now the land values and share values have come down. So they don't have the cover, whatever they have for the loan. But luckily for them, one of the courts have given a direction not to ask them for additional cover, because this is not a situation on which they should do that. So there is some relief. And one more case where there are many foreign funds which are coming in to buy operating infra assets in India. They're all valued at 700 crores, 800 crores, 1000 crores. Somebody is bringing $3-4 billion. And many of these cases, I know at least 2-3 cases where they were at the term sheet signing stage. Now those people have said, okay, let's wait for next 5-6 months and watch the situation, because the valuation of the asset will come down. So instead of buying 3 assets, they'll buy 4 assets. So again, the promoter will be affected by all this. Luckily for us, what has happened is the Delhi High Court has given an opinion that this pandemic can be regarded as a force majeure. So in this seminar, we shall examine a few of the issues like force majeure, claims and claim management, and the best course for resolution of issues, termination possibilities, and the lender's perspective. So before I go over to the panelists for their expert remarks, I would like to refresh your memory on the characteristics, basic characteristics of PPC and DPC contracts, so that you can easily follow this webinar. Whatever our experts will be saying, I just want to bring some of the differentials so that you can easily, quickly capture whatever the input they are giving. Like public-private partnership, the very first word is public. So it can only be for a public purpose. Like it can be for building a road or airport or port or water supply scheme for everybody. So for example, I cannot build a mansion for myself under PPP. It has to be an EPC contract. In the EPC contract, it will have both a private or public. Both can be there, both owners can be there. In the PPP projects, the authority will be a government. The owner of the project will always be a government authority. Whereas in EPC contract, both private as well as the government ownership can be there. Again, the tenure. PPP project can be 30 years long, 3 years long, 10 years long, 15 years long. Whereas EPC contracts are of shorter tenure, 1.5 years to 3 years, and they have time is the essence of the contract. They want to finish it quickly. One more advantage of PPP model is that they have a lot of standardization. They have draft concession agreement, which you can follow. They also have standard bidding documents. All these are periodically reviewed so that it's fairly updated. They are comprehensive. They cover most of the aspects. So more or less, they will capture all the elements of contracts. Very few missed out elements will be there. Whereas in the EPC contract, they have to go case by case. And the contract is drafted by legal experts on a case-to-case basis. Finally, there is a risk-sharing mechanism in the public-private partnership. Risk sharing is there. Sometimes the government bear more risk and the private party bear 40% risk, etc. Whereas in the EPC contract, generally the owner bears the project risk. So I want to give you a small update also. The moment this gradual lifting of lockdown took place last week, 375 national highway projects were suspended earlier. That is 4 weeks before that. Out of which 260 have been allowed to commence operation from last week. What is happening? I just called my friend who is heading a construction company in Bangalore. How do you find? What is the situation? Are you having difficulty in getting labor? Are you having enough material? Are you getting it on time? He said materials not much of a problem for Bangalore people because the interstate movement is not a problem. But labor is leaving and going back to their native place. And this is when they go, they won't come back for 3-4 months. So because they were all holed up for what 35-40 days, they are all fed up. They're going back. So this again is a concern as you open. So starting with the RC, Mr. Chandrasekharan, the lockdown is being lifted gradually and infra projects have started. How do you map the scenario post the lockdown in PPP contracts, especially with respect to force majeure provisions, and the project authority is the owner is a government authority. So how do you look at where your hat of PPP concessionaire and give your views?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, participants. Before we actually get on to the issue relating to force majeure, I would like to give you the quick background where it has come all these issues. As you all aware, on 24th March 2020, Disasters Management Authority has issued a direction directing the central government, state government and various agencies to ensure the compliance of social distancing so that there won't be any pandemic spread. So accordingly, they have instructed the government to take appropriate action and they issued a order on 24th March 2020. Pursuant to that, Ministry of Home Affairs have issued a further direction on the same day, issued various guidelines. And one of the guidelines is that closure of all private and commercial establishments right from 25th of March 2025 21 days, which is subsequently extended up to March 3rd. Consequently, what had happened, the impact of these guidelines has started impacting the performance obligation of the various contracting parties, particularly infrastructure and construction. As all of you are aware, infra, when we're talking about, I am talking about the PPP model, where the government and the private party acts as a partners. And the infra contracts have a huge stake value and a lot of stakeholders involved. And the period of infrastructure contracts are long term. For example, road projects earlier were 30 years, now it is 15 to 20. Airport it goes to 65 plus renewal for 65. Metro goes 60 plus 60. So imagine you have to look into the contract for the long term for a period of minimum 15 to 30, 60, 120. That is the way the concession agreement infrastructure are being drafted. So the sudden declaration of guidelines for closure had a complete impact on the construction activities, both infrastructure and the construction contracts. As all aware, infrastructure contracts are time-bound schedule. If there is a delay because of the what will be the reasons, including the COVID-19, it has the impact on the time delivery and the compliance of the various conditions in the contract. Consequently, there is going to be a cost overrun, time overrun, which is impacting the project and the stakeholders are very, very high. Because under the PPP, the equity shareholders and the debt lenders have a very major role to play because the government gives only land towards its part. And the private holders are investing their equity and the lenders are investing. Their stake is quite high and it is on a long term. So the force majeure has really impacted. So what happens? A legal issue has arisen very recently, which all of us are aware, whether the COVID-19 situation can be considered as a force majeure or whether the guidelines issued under the Disaster Management Act is a law. Though the order or guidelines issued under the Disaster Management Act, not law per se, but since the guidelines are issued under the Disaster Management Act 2005, it has an effect of force of law, which one has to reckon with. In fact, I would like to draw the attention of the participant. Recently, somebody has challenged the MSME Act or filed a PIL in the Supreme Court, asking them to, struck down the guidelines issued to the disaster management because, according to them, that it is affecting their fundamental right and running their business and asking them to pay salary without working all that. Though the Supreme Court has admitted the petition, but they have refused to grant a stay and they have issued only notice to the government. So what does it mean? Which means currently the guidelines are valid and people have to live with that unless otherwise Supreme Court reverses the decision, which we may not know. So for the present purpose, the guidelines and the issuing order binding on the parties, and these are circumstances which can be considered as exceptional to the performance of the obligation, which may be coming under the force majeure. But one has to look into a contract by contract, because you can't take literally the force majeure and then say I would like to take the benefit of force majeure. No, you have to look into the contract. For example, in the concession agreement, there is a detailed provisions regarding the force majeure under different kinds of force majeure. What happens in there is a termination pursuant to the force majeure, what are the termination compensation, all that has been well explained in the infra contract, which may not be there in other infrastructure contract, which is other than PPP mode. So wherever there is a force majeure clause, one has to look into whether the COVID-19 can be invoked if there is a direct link in the force majeure clause. Otherwise, one can certainly interpret like there is a provision in the force majeure, act of God, impossibility performance, things cannot be performed beyond the control of both the parties. All that can be brought into under the force majeure, and one can try to take benefit of that in complying with the contract. But certain contracts may not have the force majeure clause at all. In such a situation, how do you really look into? In such a situation, one can take the advantage of the provision under Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act, where it provides for the impossibility of performance. But one cannot take the literal sense of the impossibility of performance and take advantage of it. What does the Section 56 say? According to Section 56 stipulates that if the contract is impossible to perform, then it can be treated as a void. This position has been upheld by various judgments in the Supreme Court. But however, in the year 2017, when the Supreme Court upholding the decision gave a detailed clarification wherein it says you cannot take literally impossibility and take advantage of Section 56, but you need to, it has to be seen the context under which the performance could not be carried out, which need to be done. So what does it mean? You will have to look into the facts and circumstances of the case, whether there is a provision of the force majeure or not, whether you can invoke Section 56. Kindly remember, you will have to literally look into the particular clauses in the contract which you have entered into, either it's a concession agreement or other agreements, before you are enforcing it. Kindly remember, you cannot simply enforce it. You have to look into the clauses and the necessary supporting documents to show that you could not perform it because it is impossible to perform, and you have to give evidence to support your view. Of course, government is sympathetically looking at all the difficulties and challenges faced by the infrastructure developers, but one has to keep in mind, when you have an opportunity and you can make use of force majeure, see what conditions your contract provides and what is the current situation on the ground. Keeping this in mind, certainly one can make use of force majeure. If it is not available, one can make use of Section 56 of the Indian contract under impossibility of performance or frustration of contract.
See, that is a good explanation of how the PPP contracts are affected by force majeure provisions, as well as how the Disaster Management Act applies, and specifically that Section 56 application plus whatever the provisions of the clause in the contract is. Now, Prashanta, EPC contracts are more in number and they vary in sizes very vastly, and the ownership can be government or private. Is the scenario a bit different? And again, each of these contract is drawn by the legal counsel based on the case. So is there a scenario difference between PPP and EPC as far as the force majeure application of the EPC contract?
Thank you, Ramaswamy sir. So force majeure, the concept of the term, which is, I think the most widely deliberated, debated concept in the world today. I think all these days, everyone, including the council, the parties, everybody was sleeping over the force majeure. The world has never faced this kind of situation. The situation which we are in, the COVID-19 situation, where the entire globe is looking for the resolution. I think this is the, I mean, in the known human history, for the first time, entire globe is looking into the resolution. So the most widely debated and deliberated concept is the force majeure. So when it comes to the EPC contract, so we need to understand that PPP model contract, which is a concession contract, it is in the nature of a master agreement, which is very voluminous in nature, and it covers each concept very elaboratively and comprehensively. And when it comes to the EPC contract, it is as the duration of EPC contract is also less when it compared to concession agreement. So even the contracts are small in nature. Of course, there are some contracts which would be voluminous, but more or less what they do is, as it is only a project specific, so it will be for 18 months, 24 months, or 36 months. So based on that, it will be a smaller contracts compared to concession agreement. So when it comes to the force majeure, as RC sir told, that what matters is the content of the agreement. If we have a force majeure clause in the agreement which captures COVID-19 situation or any pandemic, epidemic, outbreak situation, directly or indirectly, we need to understand that, as I told you, all these days, it was the least negotiated, least deliberated concept, force majeure. And today, it will be in future also the most deliberated and most negotiated part of the contract. So we need to first understand in our existing contract, what does force majeure meant? Who can invoke? And what are all the, under what circumstances this force majeure can be invoked? Whether it covers COVID-19 situation, pandemic, epidemic, outbreak of any disease or virus, is it covered under it? So that we need to look into it. If it is covering it, your job is easy. I will go in terms of the agreement, I will invoke force majeure, and I will act in terms of the agreement, and I'll get the relief what has been provided in the agreement. This is scenario 1. So let us take the scenario 2. Scenario 2 is the contracts where force majeure clause is there, but directly it is not referring to pandemic situation, outbreak, or epidemic situation. Then we have to carefully interpret the force majeure clause, understand whether can we relate this clause to the existing situation. Let us say that I have written in the force majeure clause, natural calamity, act of God, irresistible force. So all these terminology, I can relate and say that, yes, my force majeure clause, the situation, the current situation is embodied, is very much implied in the force majeure clause. Hence, I will take a shelter under it, still I'll invoke it. The third category, what I wanted to say is, in case if you have some contract where you have agreed explicitly to exclude COVID-19 situation, then you have no reprieve. You cannot consider this situation as a force majeure and claim any benefits. And the fourth category of the contracts where you don't have a force majeure clause, as RC sir said, that in the contracts where we don't have a force majeure clause, then we have to go beyond our contract and rely on the enactments. And then we need to take a shelter under Indian Contract Act, especially whenever there is this kind of contingent contracts are there, when there is an impossibility. See, the relevant section in Indian Contract Act is section 32 and section 56. And the COVID situation, section 56 is very close to it, because it speaks about impossibility of for performance of the contract. It speaks about irresistible force, which is beyond the control of the parties. If there happens to be some irresistible force which are beyond the control of the parties, and because of those force you are unable to perform the contract, those contracts, notwithstanding, see, this is very important, notwithstanding anything provided in the contract, those contracts can be terminated. Those contracts can be called as void contracts, where parties are not required to pay any kind of damages to each other. So this is very crucial. We need to understand the intention of the party before invoking a force majeure. Let us see that in today's scenario, what I heard from the clients is, most of the people need a stopgap arrangement. They need a temporary solution, but they don't want to terminate the contract, or they don't want to get their contracts declared as a void contract. Then we need to see that, can any of these force majeure clause or can section 56 of the Contract Act will come for the rescue of the parties to understand whether they can seek a temporary relief, whether they can seek a temporary suspension of performance of their contract is something which we need to refer to their respective contracts. In general, what happens is we need to understand the concept of force majeure is not robust or is not well settled in India. In India, the concept of force majeure is not well settled. This is the COVID-19 situation is a big opening, a big opener for settling this concept. I think not only in India, the globe is going to settle the concept of force majeure because everyone is undergoing an universal force majeure event has occurred and everyone is undergoing under this concept. And we need to see that whether the courts in India is going to interpret and say that the force majeure clause, irrespective of having it explicitly or not, people can avail temporary suspension of the contract for the performance of their contract. That we need to see. But everything depends upon on case-to-case basis. We need to see their contract and interpret what they have in the contract. If not, then we need to take shelter under Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act.
That was very nicely put, Prashanta. Now, I feel that force majeure is going to become one of the most important clauses because earlier it was just one of the clauses. We never bothered. I have been a contract manager for quite some time for engineering construction contracts plus infra projects. We never bothered. It's cut paste. But now I think it's going to be one of the most important clauses. And if it is not there, what to do? So both were very well explained. Thanks very much for that. And coming back to RC sir, lots of claims will take place. Like one is the extension of time is obvious. Now question is how much extension of time? Is it going to be the number of days of lockdown or more? For example, like the example I was just giving, a contract person heading the project, he finds that workers are running away. When they remobilize, so what does he do? His time is going to get extended further. So will he get more extension? And similarly, cost escalations like raw material costs, etc., may go up also. And then machines have been idling. So their idling charges, they may need repair after they come back. And then mobilization, remobilization costs. Again, labor costs during the lockdown period, which the government has asked them to pay. So all these will come to a substantial amount of claim, both on time and cost. And how do the contractors go about these in a PPP contract? Can there be, is this supposed to be a renegotiation of the bid project cost, or is it extra claims which they will admit? And how will they approach the issues, and who will certify all this on PPP contracts? RC, your field now.
Sir, first and fundamentally, we must understand the basic and element of the PPP contract or a concession agreement. As you all know, the PPP contracts are under a public tendered contract where there cannot be any renegotiation. First and foremost, let us understand the PPP contract. There is no way one can renegotiate the contract. But within the framework of the existing concession agreement, which forms part and parcel of the bid document, you have to work out and arrive a solution. There is no question of renegotiating the contract. Let me give the answer straight away. Regarding the claim under various grades, yes, you are entitled for the claim, but it cannot be given just like that. Kindly understand the contracts, what we are talking about is a long-term contract. In the infra contract, I would draw attention of the participant that it can be bifurcated into 4 buckets. The first bucket, what we call it as the tender stage or in the letter of award stage. The second is called compliance of a condition precedent and achieving the financial closure. The third bucket, we can call it as the construction schedule or the completion of the project, where you achieve a COD. The last is a O&M contract or O&M period. So when you talk of your claim, you are entitled to get the claim or the loss or the cost overrun or time overrun. But first and foremost, you must understand where you are in the 4 bucket. If you are in the first bucket, what will happen? The NHI or any other authority would have given a letter of award. they would ask you to give a performance guarantee, and they would ask you to incorporate a special purpose vehicle. So if you are able to do that, or if you can't do that because of the COVID situation, yes, you can ask for the extension of the period. There is no question of claim under the first bucket. Let us come to the second bucket. What it talks of? It talks about various conditions precedent to be complied both by the authority as well as by the concessionaire. There are huge compliances to be complied by the authority as well as the concessionaire, starting with getting an approval, pollution control approval, environmental approval, state support undertaking, then financial closure achievement, and then labor approval, license. All that need to be obtained in the second bucket. One of the critical clause in the concession agreement in the second bucket is, normally in the road concession, 180 days from the date of execution of the concession agreement, one has to achieve the financial closure. Which means before you achieve the financial closure, you should have obtained all these approvals. Of course, the major one is the right of way, where you need to get all the land record for doing the project. And then you have negotiated the financing agreement with the lender, signed the financing agreement, and declare the financial closure. How it is being declared? The lender will give a letter saying that the concessionaire has executed all the documents, complied with all the conditions precedent, and now he is eligible for draw the funds. So one has to look into in this bucket. In this bucket, during this period, if there is a COVID kind of situation, there is a possibility for getting extension of the time to the extent is affected by getting approval. One. In achieving the financial closure, the 180 days, there will be a provision for extending further by paying penalty, which is provided in the concession agreement. Of course, we are not able to do that much beyond that. Then you can seek the waiver of that penalty and seek the extension of achieving the financial closure. This is under the second bucket. The third bucket, which is the very, very important, where the construction will be happening, all kinds of problems will happen. For example, the closure of all the establishments happened just within 24 hours notice by the government. All the people, workers, construction engineers, plant, site engineers, everybody has left, and the machinery and the project and site has been left as is, where is condition. No one knows what it really happened. So one has to, when the lockdown is lifted, either partially or fully, one has to assess what is the loss that has happened, what is the timeline they require to remobilize the men and machinery. Example, the people who have already left, especially construction workers, they have already migrated workers left to their own home. But they have to come back. The machinery which you have left on the site would have been trusted. The machinery would have been idle cost. The machine would have been taken on lease or license or hypothecation. You need to pay charges. And the approval, whatever you need to, has to be done. So there is a huge scope for loss or damage which you can claim. But only thing, let us remember, assess the right situation on the ground of the project. Please remember that. Don't think that anything you write, government will. Certainly it cannot be done. You have to assess each and every stage. Where is the stage of machinery? Where is the stage of mobilization of machinery? Whether raw material has come. All that need to be assessed, documented, then write to the government. Kindly remember, the moment you write to the government, they are not going to give the claim. As all of us are aware, there is an independent engineer which is appointed by the government to verify all your claim letters. So when you write the claim, please send with the supporting documents, get an acknowledgement. There will be inspection by the independent engineer for assessing the loss. And parallelly, there is a lender's engineer which have been appointed by the lenders at the time of sanctioning the loan. All of them have to examine, certify, and then it has to be submitted to the government. So the third bucket, the claim will be very huge. Here, not only time cost to overrun, there will be a time overrun. In the PPP contract, one of the very interesting factor which a developer looking at is commission the project very quickly. In other words, achieve the commercial operation date at the earliest, so that he will have the opportunity of collecting a toll, so that he starts seeing the color of the coin. So his anxiety is to commission the project by completing it in a way it is mentioned in the concession agreement. So how much time he has been lost? What is the revenue because of that? So these needs to be very carefully and scientifically has to be examined, assessed, documented, create the document, send it to the authority, certified by the independent engineer and the lender's engineer wherever necessary, and then you look for a claim. Yes, there is a scope for the claim. Otherwise, there will be definitely a huge loss and things like that will happen. Not only that, if there is a huge loss happening, then you need to ask for the extension of the concession period. One important factor I would like to draw here is any claim or any loss, any damages, which the concession is asking the authority to give, kindly note they don't give you the cash. In other words, they don't give any monetary compensation. The only way they support you is extend the existing concession period, further period, to the extent the actual loss or damage which they agree. So the question of how long you want to extend the concession period. For example, if the concession period is for 15 years, the loss and damages happened, which in terms of monetary value, it can be extended by 3 to 6 months. They will only extend it to the extent of 3 to 6 months. But in the process, what will happen is, if you want to take the additional funding for cost, that is, there is a cost to overrun of the project. How do the existing concessionaire or developer will able to get that? There is already a inbuilt provision in the financing agreements where the lender says up to 10% of your cost to overrun, the promoter or developer has to bring in, and any excess 10%, the lender will fund it. So there will be a burden on the concessionaire to bear up to 10% of the cost to overrun, which is based on the document. The beauty is the additional cost to overrun which the developer is bringing cannot carry any interest, but he has had the full liberty to bring this additional cost to overrun either by a subordinate debt or as a equity or with interest-free loan. But he cannot withdraw this amount unless the entire full and final settlement with the lender is happening. So this is one of the very crucial. Cost to overrun need to be up to beyond 10%. He has to up to 10. He has to bear it. Beyond 10%, he has to. So in this, the third bucket is very, very critical for claiming the damages. The last bucket is called operation and maintenance, where the project has been completed, where they are collecting the tolls. The COVID situation has stopped in collecting, and the government has also issued a direction: please do not collect the tolls. So you have to assess what is the revenue loss by a toll to the extent of the COVID period where they are not allowed. When you resume the toll also, you may not be able to get the revenue what you have been collecting the previous days. So you have to assess what is the toll loss during this COVID-19 period. And when you have to make the claim by taking it average of the last 3 to 6 months of the earlier collections before declaring the lockdown, and then you have to arrive it, and then substantiate it, and then you have to try to get it. Again, this
I think we will check what is the situation of the EPC contracts, where the relative bargaining power of the project owner, private project owner, is very high. They may not easily agree for whatever claim comes. And what happens is, how do we go about it? Should we go through a process of negotiations? And how do we coin the claims? Authorities, who the PMC will be the authority there, but again, it's not a government authority. So all these issues, Prashanta, how do the EPC contract, how they go, and what recourse do you advise? How do you go about this? Do you go for arbitration, negotiation? What are the steps? How do they handle that?
So that's what, sir. As I've already told, this is a situation which no one has experienced, no one has visualized. So this is a completely new situation. As actually I have been seeing that when people are asking, sir, when are we going to get back to normalcy? So people are telling there is no normalcy. Whatever we are going into a new normal situation. It means that whatever comes post-COVID era is going to be the new normal situation, and whatever has happened pre-COVID era will become a history. So today again we are speaking that in case of a client in EPSC contract, how are we going to handle it? See, one is the contracts. As I told you that what matters is a construction of contracts here. If your contract is comprehensive in nature, is covering this scenario, the entire claim mechanism has been captured in your contract, we will do nothing. We will go as per the contract. because it provides for it, and my contract is a holistic contract, a comprehensive contract which captures entire scenario and each and every situation. So that is one scenario. Then the second scenario is where contracts are not a comprehensive in nature, does not address these issues, then what has to be done? As I told you that the force measure, the concept of force measure itself is not well settled in India. So still we are interpreting and we are trying to understand how to deal with the force measure events. And after invoking a force measure event, what would be the treatment of the contracts? In that fight, we need to understand that it is a universal scenario. Today, the force measure, whatever we are experiencing, an occurrence of force measure is not project specific, a person specific, or an entity specific. It is universally in nature. If I am the victim of force measure, the other party of the contract is also the victim of the force measure because its application is universal. That being a case, and as RC sir told and as you told that PPP contract and the concession contracts are master contract where the government body is involved. But when it comes to the EPC contract, which are like a subcontracting in nature, which are like subcontract, where the private parties are involved, there is a small element of negotiation where I can go to the other party and ask that this is the situation, because I don't need to justify the situation. He is very much aware of it. So then we need to say that in what way we can reach and we can renegotiate either in terms of the time or in the terms of the consideration and whatever is there. So we need to agree and arrive at the claims mechanism in light of COVID-19 situation, in light of post-COVID-19 situation. See, in this regard, I would like to quote that what has happened in the renewable energy sector. The government in March 23rd or 22nd has issued a circular where the government has acknowledged with respect to renewable energy, because there happens to be a supply chain disruption where there are certain goods which are supposed to be imported from China. I mean, all imports were banned. So they did not get any kind of supply from China. So they requested the government to declare this scenario as a force measure, the disruption in supply chain, and they should be exempted from performance of their contract. Accordingly, government has acknowledged that, and they have considered this as the COVID-19 situation, disturbance of supply chain issue as a force measure event and given the reply. Likewise, recently in April, the same government has passed saying that during the lockdown period, there is a force measure, we agree. But what happens after the lockdown period? They need a cooling off period. So accordingly, again, the entire body has requested the government for extension of their relief, which has been granted to them, and to consider some period after lockdown period, to consider some period as again force measure period, so that they can avail the benefit. Accordingly, government has accepted their request and given 30 days buffer. It means that the entire lockdown period plus 30 days has been considered as a force measure event or a force measure occurrence period for this industry, and they have said that performance of their side of contract can be stopped or halted because of this reason, and no damages should arrive out of it, and nobody can take this as a default for the purpose of termination of contract or for declaring any contract as a bond. So this being a situation, we need to understand on a case-to-case basis, and it's a matter of a renegotiation. People, whosoever is there, they should get back to the other party and seek that this is a force measure event, and they should agree on the clear-cut claim mechanism. So it has to be considered on case-to-case basis.
Pretty good. The government giving that cooling off period, that's exactly what we are looking at, because restarting a stopped, suspended project, it takes its own time. So this is what I was asking earlier. It's good that you answered that. Now, coming to RC back, now what are the options for the concessionaire to terminate a PPP contract? Can you quickly look at any case where there is a termination notice given by the concessionaire on the authority, and maybe authority is supposed to take over or they don't like it. Any examples or any case, and how is it? How do they do it? RC.
The very question of termination is a big subject to be debated, and it's very difficult to answer in a webinar like this.
Yes,
but nevertheless, I would like to share a practical case which you have handled, in and by which in one of the projects, the authority could not comply with the condition precedent, namely the ROW to be given to the concessionaire, despite it various written and oral requisitions. And unfortunately, because of that, the road could not be completed, because let us understand, in a road project, when you give the 90% of the road land, you must give contiguous of the land. Unfortunately, the land, whatever percentage it is mentioned in the concession agreement, it has been handed over by the authority. But practically, the land given is not a contiguous land. Consequently, the road cannot be put on the land. So consequently, despite all the letters, the government could not provide the contiguity of the land. So the concessionaire has to force to issue a termination, which is rare of the rarest. The reason being, let us all remember one thing, what happens to the termination, it's a very, very last situation, the last straw one has literally looking. Because unlike the other contract, if it's a commercial contract, if we exercise the termination of the concession agreement, the concession agreement has a built-in provision for the termination process, termination payment, whether it is for the concessionaires default or it is because of the authority's default. So the termination payment is the key before you think of termination. Before you understand, it talks about the termination payment cost in the concession agreement. A quick and important point which every one of the participants has kept in their mind is that when you arrive at a termination cost, what the government means and the concession agreement conveys is the total project cost mentioned in the concession agreement. For example, if the concession agreement takes 1,000 crores as the cost mentioned into it, and the assessment by the lenders in the time of funding, it has around 1,300 crores. When the developer actually implemented the project, the actual project cost would have been 1,500 crores. If the termination happens during this kind of situation, kindly remember that termination payment is based on the total project cost mentioned in the concession agreement, namely 1,000 crores. It is not that 1,000 crores alone you will get. There are a mechanism under by which the government also come back with the counterclaim. It's not that concession alone exercise the claim and get it. It's not that way. There will be a counterclaim by the government also. Again, it will be assessed by the independent engineer. So it's very, very difficult to get the termination. One other critical and challenging issue which many of the concessionaires are not aware and will be in difficulties when they exercise the termination and you issued a notice as contemplated in the concession agreement, how the vesting is happening to the government. The moment you terminate and you follow the cure period, all that, on a particular day, you ask the government to come and take over. If they come and take over, absolutely no problem. But in many of the contracts, they have no wherewithal to come and take it because they need to have a O&M contractor, they need to have a O&M missionary, all that. So, in one of the cases what we have handled, the situation arises in the concessionaire has issued a termination notice, and unfortunately, the authority failed to come and take over the project. So, the concessionaire was left with the choice, either he has to continue the project or he has to leave the project as and where and walk away. Both are difficult because once you issue a termination notice, your position is like that of a trespasser. You can't be in the project and continue. And the same way, as all of us know that you have to collect the toll by 24/7 for 365 days. If you leave the site because you are a trespasser, you will have a loss of revenue and you are answerable to the lender. So we have advised the client, you please continue the collection, issue a notice to the authority that the termination has been given effect to. There was a deeming provision in the concession agreement saying, if you follow the procedure contemplated under the concession agreement regarding termination, the project automatically by law vested on the authority, whether the authority takes it or not or like it or not. So under the deeming provision, it has been mentioned to them, the project has been already vested on you, but since we have to collect a toll, we are running the project at your cost and your risk and cost, and we are giving the account for the collection. But nevertheless, the authority did not come and take over the project. So we are forced to go to Section 9 application in the High Court, where we want to protect the asset, and also we want directed the government to come and take over the project. Unfortunately, they still refused to take over, and they forced to appear before the court, and the court asked them to take over. And the government position was, no, the termination was illegal, we are not going to take over. But the court shown the deeming provision, the concession agreement brought in by the client, and the court accepted, yes, there is a deeming provision for which you are a party. The project has been already vested on you, so you have to take over the project. They sought 30 days time, and thereafter they appointed a contractor, they were taken over. Whether the termination legal or not will be agitated by the arbitration forum separately. The critical point here is there is no precedent in the country to using the deeming provision. There are, even though in the beginning I made an observation, the concession agreement is a detailed concession agreement. The applicability and the enforcement of force majeure, as rightly pointed out by my panelist, Mr. Prashant Kumar, nobody has really made use of. The same with the termination, also very rare of the rarest. This deeming provision has been. So, to answer your question, yes, sir. To answer your question, one has to be really careful in exercising the terminations.
This is a very good input. This is one of its kind called deemed vesting. So this is a very interesting input, Tarsi. Thanks for sharing this. Now, Prashant, one of the biggest stakeholders is actually the lender. Lender gives loan to either a working capital loan for EPC contract, or he gives a long-term loan for the concessionaire. So they are big stakeholders, and they will be severely impacted because the project costs will go up. So whether the owner has borrowed or whoever has borrowed, the concession has borrowed, and then earnings may not increase. So with this, how do the bankers as the big stakeholders, how do they take it? Also the reduction in value of the collateral given by party for loans. So this is again a different mix. So I think you would already have seen similar situations. So how do you think they will handle that?
Sir, that's what actually, sir. As I have been telling that this is a kind of a very big situation. Nobody has visualized. Same is the case with the lenders. So we have executed all loan agreements, all transaction agreements with a good spirit, a gentleman's agreement, thinking that nobody will default. Neither me and the other party will default. The entire agreement will be enforced and implemented, and there will not be any event of default. With that pretext, everyone executes the project. So with what happens, we need to understand the situation of the contractor or the EPC contractor, that when he is in need of money, what kind of a leverage he enjoys in negotiating the transaction. I always tell to the clients, whatever may be your urgency, kindly read all the loan documentation, the entire transaction documents, kindly read and then execute. Thoroughly negotiate. It's okay. The lender business is to lend. You thoroughly negotiate and see that your interest is protected in case of non-performance, in case of event of default, for the reasons which are beyond your control. See, the lenders are very specific and they are very clear. Some of the issues, if the contractors goes to them with a concept like economic slowdown, high cost of raw materials, high cost of machinery, high cost of laborer, high cost of resources. So I am unable to make a margin. I am unable to pay. All these concepts are not accepted by the lender. So today, let us come back to COVID-19 situation and say that what is the situation with the lender? One good thing that has happened, especially for the contractors, which central government has given, is in March 2020, it has issued a circular which says that any financial institutions, which include nationalized banks, financial corporations, housing corporations, and any financial institutions which are of pan-India basis, which are recognized, they should consider that any payments which are falling due between March 1st and May 31st, that if the borrower has fail to make that payment due to the reasons of COVID-19 or due to any reasons which is directly or indirectly related to COVID-19, they can take a benefit. And this is a moratorium which has been given to them. This moratorium has been given from March 1st till May 31st, which is around 3 months time. So if any payments falling due, and if there happens to be a non-payment, the same cannot be construed for the purpose of declaring any event. Such event cannot be construed as an event of default for the purpose of termination of the entire loan agreement or loan facility, or for the purpose of reporting of NPA. This is scenario number one. If your contract, any of your loan agreements or loan transaction documents does not envisage or does not provide for force majeure events like COVID-19, then these borrowers can directly go and take a shelter under central government circular, and they should immediately write to their lenders saying that there happens to be a circular and I am being adversely impacted by the COVID-19 situation for whatever reason. Non-availability, mobility, immobility of the laborers, non-availability of the raw materials, non-functional, non-operational of the machineries. For these reasons, we are unable to perform, and I am not getting my payments from the master concessionaire. So that being a case, I will not be able to make a payment. So they should immediately write to the lenders in this regard and seek a reprieve and seek a moratorium of 3 months. In case, if your contracts provide for it, well and good. If not, take a shelter under this circular and wait. There could be a very good, see, the things, that whatever is happening, what we are seeing, now we are on the May 1st, and there is no, I mean, so far we are able to control the situation, but still we have around 35,000 cases, and still the lockdown is not declared, and there is a good chances that the lockdown may be extended. Maybe small relaxation may be given by the government, but the lockdown is going to get extended. So this being a case, this circular may go beyond May also. Wait and see. If this circular goes beyond May, take a shelter under it. But kindly write to your borrower, intimate this situation. This is what it is. So as far the lenders is concerned, the central government has acknowledged the fact that it's a force majeure event, and they have given the reply. If your contracts are not providing for it, now you have a readily available relief under the central government circular.
It's very good to hear that government is recognizing and giving some relief. Now we got 1 minute to each of you. RC, what one strategy would you advocate to PPP concessionaires within 1 minute?
Sir, it is very difficult to answer that question within 1 minute, but given the time, I'll try to explain. First and foremost, kindly assess the ground situation. Understand what the current situation. Apply to the clauses in the concession agreement, whether you can ask for the claim, extension of time, or whatever is relief you are looking for. There is a provision in the concession agreement. Look at the 4 buckets, which bucket you really belong, and then try to take recourse under that. And especially with the lender, as Mr. Prashant Kumar has rightly pointed out, one has to write a letter to take advantage of the moratorium declared. Second thing is, kindly write a letter to the government. Now the government has recognized, acknowledged the COVID-19 is a force majeure situation. So all the developers concession are in a very advantageous position. But how far they can make use of it, depending upon their claims, extension of time, and the extension of concession period with the supporting document. And my last suggestion.
Supporting document, yeah, quickly please.
Yes, the last to say, kindly don't get into litigation, go to the court or arbitration. That is not going to give any relief, especially when the government recognizes the COVID-19 as a force majeure. The only recourse I would suggest to all the concessionaires, write for a claim with a supporting document through in-house counsel or external counsel, vet it legally, submit the document to the authority, and then you will look for the relief what you are entitled to. Is my suggestions.
Prashanta, one quick question from you. Same thing.
Yes.
What one strategy what you advocate?
Sir, if you ask me, the first and the foremost thing is go slow. Don't take any decisions in haste. There is no requirement to jump the gun. Read your contracts carefully. and see that whether your contract covers this situation or not. If not, kindly you are free to take a shelter under Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act or under the circular which the central government has given a moratorium. But one thing, remember that intimate the other party that there is an occurrence of force majeure event. Please remember that you cannot avail any benefit if you have not intimated the other party in writing that you have been impacted, because no relief can be sought after the force majeure event. It has to be sought at the time of occurrence. So once you believe that you have been impacted by the force majeure cause or COVID-19 situation, kindly intimate to the other party to take a benefit or avail a benefit. Otherwise, you will be the loser.
Thanks, Prashant. A lot of questions are here. Could you explain the force majeure clause as is covered under MORTH guideline? RC, quickly.
Sir, under the BPP contract, kindly refer the force majeure clause under the different head is explained in the concession agreement. You need to look into which bucket it comes, especially when the COVID-19 situation acknowledged and recognized as a force majeure. There is no problem for you to claim shelter under force majeure. Only thing you need to look into it was how much claim you are claiming, in which bucket you are from. There is no need for you to look into any of the problem, because the force majeure clause in the concession agreement very clearly mentions act of God, impossibility performance, reasons beyond the control, all can be brought under the COVID-19, which has been declared by the government as a force majeure. So there is no need for you to reinvent the wheel. Just submit the documents, assess the loss, quote the clause, submit the documents with the supporting document. Kindly remember, you cannot get any claim unless you put it in writing with the supporting documents.
Absolutely. One more question is there.
Yeah.
The force majeure clause makes a provision, this is for Prashanta. The force majeure clause makes a provision for termination of contract without any liability to both the parties, the developer and contractor, will be at a very high risk. They won't be able to recover part of the losses at least. What is your reaction?
Sir, as I told you that, as I have already answered this question during my discussion also, any force majeure clause, even it is envisaged by Indian Contract Act, it is leading to the termination of the contract. Now we need to come up with a concept that how can I get a benefit, a temporary benefit? What we are speaking is a suspension of performance during the force majeure clause and not leading to the termination of contract or void contract. So what happens is once it is terminated, definitely we are going to have a lot of issues because there is an off-a-done contract and you are at loss and the other party is also at loss. So what we need to come up with a situation which is open to the courts to settle the law. So the court has to settle the law of force majeure and say that in case of an occurrence of a force majeure event, there should be a clear-cut guidelines that there should be a provisioning for the purpose of a temporary suspension of performance of the contract. And upon expiry of the force majeure event, the contract should continue.
So I think one more question for Prashant, where you're an expert. Two questions, but addressing the same point. What about the customers of residential projects? Will they be asked for extra payments on the point of increased project costs, keeping in mind that they may also have been impacted because of the same?
So as I told you that, see, as on today, in the currently available enactment, including the RERA Act, they don't have any provision for seeking an extra money from the allottees. But as I have already told that it is a new situation. Because of this new situation, the construction cost is going to get escalated. So in case of an inflation, how it has to be addressed is something that which government, allottees, and the developers, all these three people has to think and come up with a solution. Because what happens is there is a genuine reason and everyone knows that because of COVID-19 situation, there is a shortage of labor, there is a shortage of material, and the cost of the construction is going to get high. So it depends upon if based on the mutual agreement, allottees and the developer is going to agree on the additional consideration, then RERA has got nothing to do with it. But as a matter of right, under the existing law or a prevalent law, developer cannot seek enhanced consideration.
See, this one, RC, you can take this little bit of a remark. If the contractor has termination due to force majeure clearly, then can either the government or developer terminate? This termination business is not very clear. when force majeure is applied, especially this COVID type of clear-cut force majeure where people cannot move?
Sir, it is a,
I
very
think that's
difficult.
answer and question both.
No, we can answer it. Only that you need to permit me to explain. Kindly understand, there is a, if the concessionaire himself is a contractor, then there is no question of contractor terminating. He himself terminate, which
Yes.
I would not advise it, because the termination is the last resort, and if you terminate, you will not be able to get the compensation. The termination payment as envisaged the concession agreement will not even be able to meet the loan which they taken from the lender. So kindly do not get into the termination. If the EPC contractor is separate, and then EPC contractor raises a termination on the concessionaire, who is the employee under EPC contract, that there are two contracts. One is between EPC contractor and the concessionaire and the authority. The contractor can terminate. That can be separately agitated between the EPC contract entered into between the concessionaire and the EPC contractor. Kindly remember, the clauses relating to the construction of the project is already governed under the concession agreement. The concessionaire himself can be constructing the contractor. He can himself be the contractor, then there is no problem. If the concessionaire is entered with separate EPC contract, the EPC contractor should envisage what are the conditions mentioned in the concession agreement for termination. That need to be kept in mind. Otherwise, there will be a two separate dispute that will happen. One between the EPC contract and the concessionaire consequently answerable to the developer. So it's a EPC contractor is liable, he can terminate it. But what is the provision under the EPC contract which he has entered into can be looked into before we answer the question.
So one more last question is there. I think RC, you can take that. The risk component, oblique liability of the EPC contractor is comparatively less when compared to PPP projects, wherein the developer is responsible for overall project implementation. As such, force majeure clause is more valid, more essential in PPP projects. Is that right?
In a way, he's right, because the EPC contractor risk is much less, and the developer risk is more high. I agree with you. The EPC, furthermore, the EPC contractor is a negotiated party where, as Prashant Kumar rightly pointed out, you can renegotiate and do it where the risk can be addressed. But the force majeure kind of situation in the concession agreement, the risk is high for the concessionaire. I agree with that.
Okay, one request, of course. This is a request for you to take separate session webinar on basics of infra laws, project finance, and drafting piece of thereof in India. I think we will take it up later. Thanks for
yes. Yes.
And is there anything else you want to comment, Prashant?
I think, sir, I think most of the things
Fine.
we have captured.
So thank you very much, panelists, for the good inputs, and I think we have been enlightened. And I also, want to thank Mr. Prashant Kumar Chandrasekhar.
Thank you, sir.
So, the attendees have put a lot of good questions, and thank you for your participation. I also want to thank our invisible team, Mr. Santosh Vikram Singh, Mr. Sri Kumar, and Ms. Manaswini, who have handheld us. And to the attendees, if we have missed any questions, please write to us and we will try to respond to you. And also you may look out for the recording of the session on our social media platform in the next couple of days. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with us. Stay safe. And there are lots of things coming from the Government of India in the infrastructure space, something like $300 billion per year for the next 5 years as investment for boosting employment and getting the economy back, which is equal to 22 lakh crores per year for the next 5 years. With that, I'm bidding you goodbye. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you to everybody. Thanks. Thank you.